you ever wanted to replicate an item of clothing that you have? Well, I've certainly been in that position. Whether you want to make an exact copy of your favorite t-shirt because it's too holey to be repaired, or you have an item of clothing that you'd like in another color, or you want to make a copy for your sister to be matching. Well, in any of these situations, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing how you can replicate your clothing. If you're new here, my name's Alex and I post fashion, craft and sewing content here on YouTube, so follow along for my makes and my sewing adventures. Today I'll be taking you along as I replicate a t-shirt for a family member of mine. There are a few different ways that you can replicate items of clothing. If you don't want to keep the existing item, you can seam rip or cut up the existing piece and then use that to copy the pattern pieces. Or if you do want to keep the existing item, then you can just trace around on pattern making paper. This is the item of clothing that I'm going to be replicating today. It's a boxy tee for a family member of mine, and I've picked quite a simple design for the purposes of this video, just to show you the basics of replicating a garment. This one's got a few rips under the armhole, so whilst we could repair it, I think we'll be using this fabric, turning it into something completely new, and then just replicating this t-shirt design because it's quite practical. It's just a nice boxy shirt, as you can see, in a really beautiful linen fabric. I'm going to be creating a replica in this fabric. I've already pre-washed it. I haven't ironed it yet, so it's a little bit crinkly, as you can see. This is a really beautiful fabric that I picked up from the fabric store here in Melbourne. I got quite a lot of it because I want to make a dress for myself as well out of this, because I thought it was just such a beautiful design. Let me know if you have any ideas on what dress I should make out of this, because I don't have any idea. If you like this t-shirt that I'm currently wearing, shout out to my sister for buying this for me. It's actually the topography of Mount Ainslie in Canberra, which is Australia's capital city. And yeah, it's a super cute tee and a really nice brown color. I wear it all the time. I think it's a little boutique store that sells these. Because it was a gift, I'm not really sure, but I'll post a link in the description if I can find where it was from. So the first thing that you want to do if you want to replicate a garment is to take your garment and have a close look at all of the seams. So you might want to turn your garment inside out to do this, and just have an understanding of how that garment was constructed, how many pattern pieces you would need to have, and maybe the order of construction as well, and what type of seams that you might want to use. So I've just flipped this one inside out so we can show you. So there's obviously quite a square front bodice piece. There's quite a square back bodice piece. And then there's two rectangular sleeves that we need to replicate. And these are pretty much just straight rectangles. Then looking at the seams, this has just got overlocked edges, just a straight stitch and then overlocked edges, which is fine given it's a woven fabric. And there's no other noticeable points about the construction. If we look at the hem, it seems to be a simple rolled hem, so that will be pretty easy to replicate. And then if we look at the neckline, you can see that they've got a little bit of bias binding, so we'll have to create that. But otherwise, we're just looking at those four pattern pieces, the front, the back, and the two sleeves. Great, so once you have an understanding of what you need to create to replicate the garment, it's time to start creating the pattern. There's two ways that you can do this. Firstly, you can rip apart your garment at the seams if you don't want to keep the existing garment, and then you can directly trace those pattern pieces onto either pattern paper or onto a new fabric. Or if you do want to keep your existing garment, then you can simply lay the existing garment out flat onto pattern paper and then trace it as best as you can. But obviously keep an eye out for things like you'll need seam allowance and things like that. For the purposes of this video, I'll show you how to replicate your clothes without having to rip apart the existing garment. So let's get into it. To begin, you need to trace the outline of your garment on tracing paper, ensuring you lay the garment down as flat as possible and capture the shape as accurately as possible. In this case, I'm tracing around the bodice and the sleeve shapes. It might not be super neat yet, but this is just a draft outline, so don't worry. So as you can see, when I'm tracing out the pattern, you can see it's a little bit lopsided. So this is where it's beneficial to be able to do it on a piece of paper rather than directly onto a new piece of fabric that you're going to cut out. That way you can make adjustments with your rulers and pencils to the pattern before you create the final garment. In this case, because this is a well-loved t-shirt, it's a little bit lopsided. The fabric has pulled a little bit on this side compared to this side, so that's why I prefer doing it on pattern paper. If you think that this is a design that you really love, then you could also digitize the pattern, save it on your computer, and then whip it out whenever you wanted to create another replica. Of course, be mindful if you are replicating clothes, it is someone else's design, so you shouldn't be selling that or anything like that. But for personal use, then that can be a handy little tip. So once you have the first outline of the garment, you should then take your pattern paper to a hard, flat surface like this big table here, and then use rulers to make sure the pattern is neat, has even measurements, and that you're happy with the size. While you go through this process, you can keep referring back to your garment as you need. If you want to make any pattern adjustments, for example, like taking the sides in, you would do it at this stage. Once you're happy with the pattern pieces, make sure to mark up your pattern with information like cut this piece on the fold, and then don't forget to add your seam allowance. I'm just adding 1 centimeter here around the perimeter, but not on the fold line, of course. Once you've done that, you can cut out your pattern pieces, and it's as simple as that. Now you have a paper pattern of your garment that you can use whenever you want to create a replica. So now I've got my pattern pieces, 1 sleeve piece to cut, 2 pieces on the fold, and then the bodice piece, which I'll also cut 2 pieces on the fold. The front and the back of this design are the same. I might hem the front a little bit shorter, but we'll see. So I'm going to iron the fabric now, and then I'll get cutting. Cutting with a rotary cutter, so satisfying. If you use rotary cutters, how often do you change your blade? Maybe you can get them sharpened, like how you get scissors sharpened, but I guess it's probably easier just to get a new blade. I'm just cutting out the sleeve, and then we'll have completed all of the pattern pieces. So there we go. I've got 2 bodice pieces. Because they're quite oversized, you can't really see the shape, but you saw the pattern, so you can know that it's there. And the 2 sleeve pieces. And then got a few scraps and things. I'll put it in my stash. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all of this yet, but there's some good pieces that I might be able to patchwork, and then smaller pieces I'm going to use as stuffing for a pillow or something like that. I actually did a test version of this top before I decided to film a YouTube video about it in this pink and white pinstripe. I think I'll elevate this a little bit and do French seams all the way on the inside and even on the armholes. Yeah, there's not too many seams, and I may as well, given it's a gift. I actually tried this one on just to see what the fit looked like, and it is honestly quite a nice shape, like a nice oversized but elevated t-shirt. And I'm like, maybe I should just make one for myself. Or maybe I should keep this one because, you know, this was a practice, so the sewing isn't like the greatest, and I'll nail it on the second one, and that will be the gift. So I don't know, we'll see what I end up doing. I always say we'll see, and then half the time I forget and I don't even see. Anyway, doing the practice also made me realize an important point about constructing this top. I normally sew sleeves into the armholes in the round, and that's what I did for this top, but I think because it's such a rectangular shaped sleeve cap, that I will just sew it to the bodice first and then sew the side seam, rather than sewing the whole thing in the round. I think that will just be easier and it will look neater. I'll get to sewing and it should come together pretty quickly. Here I am sewing the bodice pieces together at the shoulder, wrong sides facing, as the first step in creating a French seam. And then I have to trim down the seam with fabric scissors before pressing the seam nice and flat. And then the final step of creating a French seam is sewing the fabric right sides together to encase the raw edge. This is how the seam looks, super neat and professional. I then repeat this French seam process for the remaining construction of the top, for the sleeves and the side seams specifically. I've made good progress. I have the main structure of the top. So I've put the sleeves on and I've sewed down the side seams, and it's all French seamed, so it looks beautiful on the inside, which I'm really happy about. But I did just want to give a little mid-project update, because I realized that in the original design the sleeve caps are folded over, and I did do that in my practice top that I made, but in this one I've obviously forgotten, so I thought about unpicking and just doing it how it was originally, but I tried it on and I actually quite liked the longer length, so I might leave it and I'll see how my family member feels about it, because I can always shorten it if they don't like the added sleeve length. What I really love about sewing is that you can make little mistakes along the way and then you kind of problem solve as you go, which means that you're exercising your creativity, and sometimes the outcome is a little bit different than what you expected, but that can be better, honestly. All I have to do now is do a rolled hem for the bottom of the top and then also for the sleeves, and then add the bias binding to the neckline. This is me hemming the sleeve cuffs and the bottom of the shirt. I'm just doing a simple rolled hem. I've folded the edge over once, and then here I am sewing close to the edge, about 1/2 centimeter. This makes sure you get a really neat edge. Now I've rolled the edge again and sewed it down over the existing seam to finalize the hem. The last step in constructing the top is finishing the neckline. So here I'm creating some bias binding using the continuous bias binding trick and this bias tape tool. I find this to be the quickest and easiest way to create perfect bias binding, and lots of it. Here I am sewing the bias binding to the neckline. This is something I've always found to be quite fiddly, so I definitely recommend taking your time with it. That's the first side of the bias binding finished. Then I am folding the other side over with the help of some wonder clips, and then the final step is to stitch in the ditch to finish the neckline. This is what the finished neckline looks like, very neat on both sides, and then I've just attached my label to the top. So this is the final top. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. The insides look really professional, and I think this fabric choice is really perfect for it. It's lightweight, breathable, nice linen, and then the kind of inky floral pattern is really versatile. Obviously I'm wearing it for this final reveal, but it is going to a family member, so hopefully they like it.